Pillars of Faith, Part 3, the Bible. We are all sinners, and because we are sinners, we often don't let God's love simply pass. In this sense, the message of God does not go around easily. Sometimes we say to ourselves, but what did I just say to this person about God or the church? Something wasn't right. Then we try to seek a better answer. We learn this way. We can ask someone to understand better what the answer is, to better enlighten that person next time. By helping others, we learn. When we've been mistaken about the church's or God's reality, and that we discover new and more precise answers, we evolve towards more clarity, more truth. The writers in the Bible are similar to us. There are people who wrote about God, but who did not necessarily understand who God is. God even said, "You have stiff necks," which means you are hard-headed. The Lord said to Moses, "I see how stiff-necked this people is," in Exodus. In the Bible, there is the Word of God. There is also human history with its strength, but also with its trespasses, its miseries, the harm that people do without God. Let's be reassured, though, all the Bible texts are wanted by God so that we understand the difference between the evil that some do and the love of God, who constantly calls, challenges his people, his children, to know him. Let's look at a first example, Joshua. Notice here that Joshua says that God fights with his people in a war against other people, as it is well written. "Fear them not, for the Lord your God will fight for you," well, the enemies, in Deuteronomy. Of course, we often think of those texts as the Lord who is fighting our inner enemies within us. And it's true that God helps us eliminate what is evil in us. But that's not how it's written. So, can God fight Joshua's enemies in a war? Can God fight his children, his own creatures? No, because God is love. God can never want to destroy his creatures, his children. No parent would want to go to war against his child. God does not have weapons in hand. God cannot hurt no one. Humans do inhuman acts, and they are the ones who have the weapons to engage in a war. So Joshua thinks that God thinks like him. Joshua thinks that God is with him in his war. He thinks that God is as much in what's good as in evil. But God is never in evil, never in a war. It must be said that this story is many thousand years in the past. Morality and psychology, the sense of fault, of evil, the sense of the other, of others, and of God are not understood like today. There has been an evolution, and we are still evolving. Second example, Noah. God said to Noah, "The Lord repented of having made man on the earth. He was angry in his heart, and he said, I will wipe out from the earth the man whom I have created." Sorry about that. In Genesis. A few verses further, God seems to add, "I will destroy them and the earth with them." So God cannot. We repeat, God cannot do any harm or allow evil. We cannot want to kill humans. God don't want to kill humans. It is well said in verse 12 that every being of flesh had a corrupt behavior. Therefore, it is because of their sins that they create their own flood. They hurt themselves by moving away from God Let's bring both hands together. It is the remoteness of God's love that leads to sin. Sin hurts us and hurts others. All this time, God remains love. He has never hurt anyone. So does this mean that the Bible is no longer useful? Of course not. The Bible allows us to discover God's love. Then there are humans who have inhuman thoughts, words, and gestures. Humans too often do not have a clear idea of who God is. It may still be true today. Third example, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Jesus tells us in Matthew. And we know Jesus is love, so he does not ask us to cut a member of our body. It's not the hand that we must cut off, but what is between the hand and the object. We cut the momentum to sinning. The money on the table does not hurt no one. It's what we do with it that's good or bad. Our body does not have the command to hurt us. Our body has been created good by God. It's either our goodwill that leads our body to love, or our bad will that leads our body to sin. The body does nothing without the good or bad will and decision of the person. This next example is the same. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out. Matthew might have taught differently from us in his time, and his message was perhaps clear to them. But today we know that God does not ask us to mutilate ourselves. God does not seek to harm or hurt us, no matter how subtle evil may be. Let us simply separate what is between the eye and the object, and that makes us sin.